The town of Ash Hollow was a quiet, unassuming place surrounded by dense forests. Life moved at a steady rhythm, the days punctuated by the distant calls of birds and the soft rustling of the pine trees. But beneath the surface, Ash Hollow hid a secret that the town's residents had long whispered about but dared not confront. At the edge of the forest stood an old manor, weathered and forgotten. The locals called it Blackthorn House. The structure was a relic of a bygone era, its once grand facade now cloaked in ivy and decay. No one had lived there for decades, but rumors persisted of strange occurrences, lights flickering in the windows at night, faint whispers carried on the wind, and shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Sophia Brooks, a journalist from the city, arrived in Ash Hollow on a crisp autumn morning. She had heard about Blackthorn House and the chilling legends surrounding it. Hungry for a compelling story, she rented a room at the town's only inn and began asking questions. "Why does no one go near Blackthorn House?" Sophia asked them. Innkeeper, an elderly woman named Mrs. Hargrove. Mrs. Hargrove hesitated, her weathered hands trembling as she poured Sophia a cup of tea. "Some places aren't meant to be disturbed," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That house. It's cursed. People who've gone there don't come back the same." Sophia, skeptical but intrigued, pressed further. "What happened there?" Mrs. Hargrove shook her head. "It's best you don't ask." Undeterred, Sophia decided to investigate for herself. Armed with her camera, notebook, and a flashlight, she ventured toward the manor as the sun dipped below the horizon. The path to Blackthorn House was overgrown and treacherous. The towering pines loomed overhead, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers. Sophia's footsteps crunched on the dead leaves carpeting the ground, and every now and then she heard the snap of a twig behind her. She stopped and turned, shining her flashlight into the darkness, but saw nothing. When she reached the house, the sight was both eerie and magnificent. The grand double doors were cracked and weather-beaten, the windows darkened by grime. Sophia pushed the doors open, and they groaned in protest. The interior was suffused with a chilling stillness. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs draped the chandeliers like funeral shrouds. Sophia snapped photos and took notes, her breath visible in the cold air. As she explored, she noticed something odd. The walls were adorned with faded portraits, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow her. She dismissed it as a trick of the light, but unease gnawed at her. Then she heard it, a faint whisper. It was barely audible, like the rustling of leaves, but it was unmistakable. "Leave," the voice seemed to say. Sophia froze, her heart pounding. "Hello?" she called, her voice echoing in the empty house. Silence. She shook her head, convincing herself it was just the wind. But as she ascended the staircase, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "You shouldn't be here." At the top of the stairs, Sophia found a locked door. The whispers seemed to emanate from behind it. She jiggled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Determined, she searched the nearby rooms for a key. In what appeared to be the study, she found an old journal. Its leather cover was cracked, and its pages were yellowed with age. The journal belonged to one Edward Blackthorn, the house's last known resident. Journal entry, October 15th, 1883. The experiment's progress, though the results are unsettling. The whispers grow louder each night, and I fear I have awakened something I cannot control. Journal entry, October 20th, 1883. I tried to stop, but it is too late. They are here, and they will not leave. Sophia's hands trembled as she read. The entries grew increasingly erratic, filled with references to rituals, sacrifices, and an entity that Edward had summoned. The final entry was a scrawl of barely legible words. They demand blood. A sudden crash shattered the silence, and Sophia jumped. She dropped the journal and spun around, her flashlight beam darting across the room. The sound had come from downstairs. Gathering her courage, she crept back down the stairs. The front door was ajar, swinging gently on its hinges. She closed it and turned back to find a figure standing at the foot of the staircase. It was a man, his face obscured by shadow. His clothes were tattered, and his posture unnatural, as though he were straining against invisible chains. "Who are you?" Sophia demanded, her voice trembling. The man tilted his head, and when he stepped into the light, Sophia gasped. His eyes were hollow, empty voids that seemed to suck in the light. "You should not have come here," he rasped. His voice was layered, as though a chorus of whispers spoke through him. Before Sophia could react, the man vanished, dissolving into a cloud of black smoke. The whispers surged, filling the air like a swarm of bees.